Zimbabwe has been in economic trouble for more than a decade. But 2 years ago, there was a ray of hope for the cash-starved nation. The possible discovery of oil and gas in the north of the country on the border with Mozambique. The Energy Minister Winston Chitando said the oil and gas deposits are Africa's largest oil reserves discovered to date. The company behind the discovery is little known outside the industry. Invictus Energy is an Australian-listed oil and gas company, and its only real assets are those in Zimbabwe. Well, the find, if proven commercial, could be a game changer. Invictus has already signed a 20-year deal to provide 100 million cubic feet of gas to a local power company. Well, from Perth, Australia, via Skype, we're joined by Invictus Energy's managing director and founder, Scott McMillan. Thanks for your time with us today. How much oil and gas deposits do you believe is in the Cabora Bassa region?
We've had some independent estimates carried out, and based on these independent consultants, they've estimated that around about 10 trillion cubic feet and 300 million barrels of condensate could be present in the Cabora Bassa Basin. That's equivalent to around 1.9 billion barrels of oil equivalent. So pretty substantial by global standards, and something that we're very excited about.
How did you come by this find, however? Because I understand that Mobil, which is now, of course, part of ExxonMobil, did some testing back in the 1990s, and you're using some of their geological studies.
That's correct. So Mobil did carry out an extensive campaign in the early 90s in the Greater Zambezi Valley. And the first part in our exploration program was to reevaluate the data that they left behind. And we were able to obtain the original field tapes and seismic surveys that they acquired, reprocess that data, and shed new light on the basin and its petroleum potential. And now we've concluded those studies, and we're going forward with our own exploration program on the ground. And in fact, we've got a team going into the country and into the basin next week to start some reconnaissance for our infill seismic campaign, which we're planning to start next year following the rainy season.
I'm not asking you to speak on behalf of Mobil, of course, but from your understanding, why did Mobil decide not to drill at the time? Was it not commercially viable for a company of its size?
So Mobil were exploring for big oil targets, and this was back in the early 90s. And when they had finished their evaluation of the basin, they concluded that the petroleum system was more likely to be gas prone as opposed to oil prone. And back then, there was no structured market for gas in the region. And in fact, there were already some large existing discoveries in neighboring Mozambique onshore, the Countng fields, which were discovered in the early 60s, that were still sitting undeveloped. So Mobil saw very little point in trying to discover even more gas. Fast forward 25 years, however, and the energy dynamics and the gas market in particular has changed dramatically. There's now a burgeoning both domestic market as well as a regional market. And we see a great opportunity to become not only a significant supplier domestically, but also in the region, and particularly South Africa, which is a very large gas market, which is on our doorstep and is facing a supply shortage by the mid-2020s.
So is there enough gas then in this find to make the country energy independent?
So if our exploration campaign is successful and we discover what we believe is there, then not only will the country have the ability to become energy independent, but also a net energy exporter. And that can be in multiple forms. There's a lot of ways of monetizing gas now. You've got gas to power, you've got fertilizer, you've got small-scale LNG, as well as petrochemicals. So all of those can play a mix and ensure that Zimbabwe becomes a net energy exporter.
And what does this mean for the local economy, and particularly for jobs for many of the local people?
Well, for a discovery that has this sort of potential in terms of its size, it will be an absolute huge boost for the economy, and as well as jobs that will naturally follow. So, you're talking about thousands of jobs during the construction and development phase, directly at the project. Then in the operations phase, that'll taper down, but then that'll also result in a lot of jobs created in the midstream and the downstream sectors. And so you're going to have a boost not only to the overall economy and significant contribution to the fiscus, but a lot of jobs created as well.
And just for clarity's sake, you're employing local people now, or are you relying on outside expertise to get to the oil and gas?
So we've got a mix of, in our team, in our headquarters in Perth is mainly where our technical work is undertaken. Sadly, We don't have the expertise in Zimbabwe in the oil and gas sector, but we're hoping to develop those skills and local skills as we go and as our program advances. However, in our Harare office, that's entirely staffed by locals. And in fact, our country manager there actually ran Mobil's previous exploration program. So he's very well versed and will be great for the upcoming operations. And now that we're on the ground and commencing our field activities, our presence in country will also start to ramp up as well. So there'll be more local employment too as part of the project.
Right. Okay. And what about the funding? Are you sufficiently funded or to make sure that you can see this project through?
So we're funded for our forward field program coming up. And in addition, we're aiming to conclude a partnering program to bring in an additional partner by the end of the year. And then that'll see us funded for the drilling campaign coming up.
As for the government of Zimbabwe, do they have a stake in this at all? Will they be relying on tax revenue?
So at the moment, we're in the midst of finalizing a production sharing agreement with the government, and that will result in the country receiving a portion of either the product or the profit over and above the normal taxes and royalties. So this production sharing agreement will ensure that the country gets a fair share of her resources by implementing this.
All right, Scott McMillan, thank you very much for speaking to us from Australia. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's our show.